So my next guest on Chat with Anju is India's leading fashion designers, a pioneer, entrepreneur, India's bridal couture giant. I had the opportunity to first meet him and work with him in 2004 in Moscow, where we actually showcased his collection at the Indo-Russian Fashion Weekend, in Moscow. And since then, we've had a great friendship. We catch up at any point, anywhere. So let me welcome my dear friend, Tarun Tahiliani.
Thank you, Anju. Lovely to be on the show with you.
And thank you for joining me.
Well, like an old friend, you didn't give me much choice, did you?
Yeah, I know. I nagged you a bit.
Well, I'm used to you. You dog and Sindhianis. I'm used to you girls, so that's what I like. Anyway, so it's all, our couture switched to Zoom and people are walking and then they need to see sketches or variants of things. And last week was probably a record week in the history of this company. But because there's not so much ready to wear going on, So just when we thought we were like this, we're like shooting up and it's amazing. So, when you had a 2-3 month lockdown, I said, guys, I'm going in this morning. I want to finish all the backlog of ideas and sketches. So the commercial team is looking after them tomorrow. And I have time to move on to the next slot, because we're also working on many projects. So like everything, Anju, there's always some great opportunity that comes out of things. And, after seeing how much suffering we saw in India, leave alone the rest of the world, you have to just count your blessings, give gratitude, and make the most of every day. I'm doing that, We're not whining, we're not crying, we're getting on with it. Our work is getting better. Because the ateliers are smaller, we've gone back to greater refinement. Some of the things that you lose with scale, you regain at a time like this. And being down, the downtime has allowed us to think about what really matters. So in many ways, it's been a blessing in disguise with not one, but many silver linings, And I'm grateful for it, no matter what the consequence has been and still unfolding for this country and the rest of the world. I mean, it's a disaster. But, such is life, What goes up must come down and every coin has another side. And so I'm just making the most of it.
But I'm sure the first 2 months when it all started, I mean, when the, lockdown started, it must have been a little bit different. And then you kind of adapting to the new norm.
Of course, I was in shock. I've never been in my home. I've been here since the middle of March or early March. I've never spent this kind of time. And the first, from the 18th of March, to May when we opened, but it took a week or 2 weeks to just get over the shock that you were suddenly slammed shut. We were finishing the book. This is our 25th year. We had all these deadlines because we've never done in our life. The book launch would be in Jan or Feb. But so, it was just a shock because suddenly you were just running, and bang, you're slammed shut. It's almost like if your treadmill stops, you suddenly almost fly over backwards. I felt a bit like that. But then it suddenly settled down. And it was spring. And the gardens were full of flowers. And, the sky really, in a city as polluted as Delhi, you all don't have that in Dubai. You're very lucky. It went from being, I wouldn't say it was smoggy because March is a nice month, but it went to being crystal clear and there was bird song. And it's like we were in a miracle unfolding, Of course, simultaneously, and there were hardly any infections, so nobody was worried back then. But it's been so chaotically managed. Then you started seeing the migrant thing, and then a lot of other terrible realities came to fore. And you really began to think, and at that point, we were feeding thousands of people outside our factory. They were not even our workers. But because no provision had been made, we got a frantic call from the association saying, can you enter other factories? There's some few hundred people. We said yes. It swelled to 2,700 people. We were giving them lunch and dinner every day. It didn't cost much. But it was just crazy, the whole thing. And people were starving all over. We have lakhs and millions of daily wage laborers. Nobody had thought about them or made no provision. And people were stuck and then they were walking I mean, it was West Indies. It was like watching partition again. You know, we all have something from our grandmothers that we've heard. I mean, all our families, 2 generations back, what they went through. It was like watching a horror story on television. So you count your blessings, you look after your people. You know, it was mad. Love it. How much I love my design studio. How I'm just going back every day and thanking God that I've come back and we're doing our best work, and it's going to flourish. And it's such a, you think of it differently. It's a vehicle to employ thousands of people because it's so much craft. We have to educate. My sense of why I'm doing it has shifted. It's been amazing as a personal journey. And I don't mean to sound cliched. It's not like we realize how little we need here. We do. I still want to live in this beautiful house. I want to travel well. I mean, it's not that I'm not shocking, but I'm not chasing some myth. But the power of this company and what we do and how we influence people has such a greater responsibility than just self nourishment and self, doing things for yourself. And I've gone back with a very different attitude, and I just love it.
You're sounding so positive.
It is that positive. So many things you rediscovered. You had the chance, and no personal trauma. Yeah, the business has shrunk and all. But look what's happened in Lebanon. Look what's happened in so many places in the world.
Yeah.
You know, the level of destruction. At a personal level, we've got away scot-free. At a national level, a lot of people have suffered. But it's our job, those of us who are privileged, to work harder and start quickly employing those people back. You know, I want to make handcraft and do simpler things so you could wear a tunic with one beautiful motif, not a full chicken. You know what I mean?
Yes,
you have to think differently.
I'm sure you must have got a lot of inspiration sitting home with some new ideas and things, for the new world.
Well, there's no better thing for new ideas than stillness. And normally, if you're running, then you're running. But when you're still, it's almost like, of course, I was reading a lot. I've looked at lots of books. I've gone back to the studio, and you look at old things with new eyes. And you look at new things totally differently. It's a very exciting journey. I mean, in a way, I've never been happier. It's crazy.
Yeah. I can imagine. Even I've started these chats, which I never thought of doing, but something has come up, and I'm.
As individuals, as a society, I think it was long overdue because materialism had sort of reached. I mean, how much further could it go? We were already destroying the planet, right? I mean, destroyed rather. And Instagram and all these social media were making people more and more insecure because there was too much information. We can't have less clothing unless women don't feel the pressure to wear something new every day because they've been on Instagram. I mean, the value system had become haywire. And it's not as if people do it to themselves. I think there's a collective responsibility. It's the magazines, it's the red carpet, it's the stylists. I mean, it's this whole pressure, this whole fake pressure of what glamour is. Glamour's not that. Glamour's being cool in your own skin, having your own style, loving who you are. So what if you wear the same thing 5 times? If you look beautiful, who gives a damn, There are many poor people who don't have more than 3 things. They look amazing. So, and there are many rich who have a new thing every day and look like wrecks because they have no sense of style, right? So, I mean, I think stop, everybody. Think about it. Redefine. You owe this to yourself. You owe this to the planet. We owe this to each other as a society. We all coexist. And this was our chance, and I hope we don't blow it.
Yeah, and it was a long period for us to realize this. If it had gone shorter, we wouldn't have realized
and let me tell you, at least here in India, I know that Dubai has been very progressive, and it's much smaller, so it's easier to contain. But in India, our life is still not gone back to normal.
So what do you think is going to happen with the new brides? Like, are they going to really try things only at the final stage, or is it going to be...
Well, a lot of brides are now having forced to shop online.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them who could postpone their weddings to early next year, or the other trend is to do something very small, literally with the 2 families, and then have the big celebration next year if you feel like. But there's suddenly a huge, and I'm talking huge, inflow of brides for November.
Okay.
And some of these people are planning 2,000 people, events, but it's all kind of sprung back in a wild way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if these things are possible or not. Let's see. I mean, people are being optimistic, or they're saying we'll only take 300 people. You know, Indians, only 300 people.
Only
Any industries that are hammered beyond redemption. And the truth of the matter is, if you're going to have a big lockdown and look at America or Europe as your example, then you must also pay salaries like they pay salaries. You can't have the lockdown and not pay salary because you've shattered the economy. We're in a depression. We're not in a recession here. We're in a serious depression. And worse.
How are your karigars managing in the villages? I mean, you must have obviously reduced
it's very
numbers.
hard. So we paid full salaries till the factory opened a little beyond. And then we had to say, look, whoever comes to work. One of the big learnings I've done, because chicken curry is done in all the villages around Lucknow. It's always been done, so that hasn't suffered. But it took us time because we were shut from May to June, and then we have to refire the engines, and there's a backlog, and there's chaos. We haven't been able to feed them with enough because we don't know what's happening, you know. And I don't like to do things and not pay. You know, I always say whatever goes out, it must be in the cash flow, right? I don't want, because there are too many people who are not getting paid. That's not acceptable.
Yeah.
That's one. And the second thing is that we also are now consciously going to move a lot of our embroideries back to villages and small towns, where big clusters, we already were working in Bareilly and Farrukhabad and a bit north of Calcutta, and Lucknow was a huge center. But now I'm saying we got to move 70-80% there. And only the couture, the first sample or the one-of-a-kind pieces. So you come in, it's tweaked, the colors change. I can't send that away. It has to happen. We always maintain 300 to 400 embroiderers in our building, you know, in the next building. Because there's too many one-of-a-kind or urgent pieces where things can't go wrong. Or, you know, super high, you know, well, not net worth, but high-profile clients who often give us very short notice and need things. And, you know, you can't say no. So you have to get a fully embroidered thing out in 9 days. It has to be done under your eye. So you're monitoring it, you're checking it, you know, you can't say that can't be done in Bareilly. Also, we're very particular about the cleanliness of units. So what we achieve here, because if you notice, a lot of Indian clothes smell, and I don't like that, because of the embroidery units. It has to be done in a certain way. And bringing it slowly back up. That's our fight right now, but we need the distribution to open, because there's only so much you can sell online. And even when we were on sale in June and July, a lot of our top clients who normally shop a lot said, I haven't been able to wear one thing in 3 months. I don't even know what to wear, what I have. What am I going to buy more for? So the only people who are shopping are people who have their family weddings.
Yes.
The brides and their I think as Indian women, particularly because that's our main clientele, are exposed and are traveled and are more urbane, there's a balance that comes into everything. You can't be a black Prada dressed one day and some gungat-laden, you know, Basanti from Sholay the next. You've got to find your own style in whatever you do. And I think that's happening very nicely too.
Do you think there are going to be any of these ramps anymore? The, you know, fashion show ramps? It's going to take a while.
But we had a very successful digital show in July, which you might have seen. We shot it and we did a 78-piece show. And that's what's driving our business right now. It is a big thing for buyers because buyers need to see quality. And you can't tell the difference obviously between silk or polyester on a show, on a video, right? They have the same sheen. But you can in real life, and serious buyers go to the showroom and touch the clothes before they order them.
Yeah.
What's happened with this whole pandemic is that it's forced the designers to go directly to their customers more. So like you see it, you order. Sometimes, you know, a lot of clothes are going home. So people are shortlisting and saying, sorry, we're not comfortable. So one of our salespeople will go to the house, fully masked, and have them, they'll try. They write the order. You know, you just have to do what you have to do.
Yeah.
So it'll modulate, but tell me, you're a woman. So what is retail therapy if you can't sometimes just go and lose yourself and browse and try and touch things and explore a fantasy? It's not as clinical as just ordering on a phone. So I hope you women will go back to your own fantasies sooner than later. You must.
We will, absolutely. And you know, sometimes when you know the designer, you really know, okay, I know it's Tarun Tailiani's, I know what it's going to fit like, I know what it's going to look like. And you go with that also, right? Doesn't matter.
I said, it's time to put the Maharaja and Tiger to bed. We're a modern, dynamic country, you know. Women want a bustier, they want a corset, even with the sari, which, you know, I've been doing for years. You know, I mean, how long do you want to look like some old Maharani, you know?
Absolutely.
And most women can't, at least we Sydneys can't take it. And so it's got to be a bit of both, you know. You got to take the past. I mean, you can't have, you know, the French designers wearing farthingales and hoops, because today's woman is different. You party differently, you know, you dance till the dawn. So I think even that, I view this downtime for people with privilege as a catalyst of sort, because you had time to be still, to regain and find yourself. And basically, you kind of, it's like a catalyst to take you to a space that perhaps you left behind, or, you know, you carried by a current somewhere else.
Yes, very well said. And I can't wait to see your upcoming collections with all this in mind. Thank you so much, Tarun, for giving me your time.
It was a pleasure, and always a pleasure to chat with you, and so easy. Where did the time go? That's why you said, known each other too long, we just freewheel.
Can you imagine? We haven't seen each other. Okay, we saw each other many times, but 2004 we actually, you know, got together.
Well, I'll never forget, you picked us up at the airport. Wait, I must tell your viewers. Anju picked us up at the airport. She's wearing a baseball cap with 2 blonde plaits. It's never been erased from my memory.
Seriously?
We had a lot of fun on that trip.